Shalom, everybody. Welcome back to the Baal HaSulam's Matan Torah with commentary by Rebbe Avraham Morechai Gottlieb, who I'll be referring to as the Rebbe Shlita. We are on page 68 in the middle, and hope everyone had a happy Passover. Hope it was enlivening and filled with growth and light and goodness. And I think we should just dive in. Baal HaSulam begins. For the revelation of the Creator's divinity at first reaches a created being as a small measure of the Creator's pleasing abundance. Then the amount received continues to increase until it attains the ideally desired degree. When this happens, the lowly are raised up via a true recognition of God to be a chariot for God and to cleave to Him, until they reach their final perfection, which is expressed by, quote, "No eye has seen God other than you," from Yeshaya or Isaiah 64:3. Let's read that again. For the revelation of the Creator's divinity at first reaches a created being as a small measure of the Creator's pleasing abundance. Then the amount received continues to increase until it attains the ideally desired degree. When this happens, the lowly are raised up via a true recognition of God to be a chariot for God and to cleave to Him, until they reach the final perfection, which is expressed by, quote, "No eye has seen God other than you," from Yeshaya or Isaiah 64:3. The Rebbe Shlita says on the comment of, then the amount received continues to increase until it attains the ideally desired degree. He says, consciousness of God's divinity is revealed gradually. At first, there is just a basic awareness, but nonetheless, it is, quote, as a small measure of the Creator's pleasing abundance, end quote. For even the smallest measure of God's revelation contains more joy than all the pleasures of this world. Subsequently, the sense of this pleasant divine abundance increases in accordance with the individual's spiritual work. The Rebbe Shlita says in Inner Work, or otherwise called as Avodas Hashem, which is a free download in the description in PDF format, one who is thankful and appreciates what God gives can be given more. From his book, Mamagalot Hashana, which can be found in the bookstore, in the description. Someone who is thankful and appreciative is given more and more. That is the namesake of the Jew in Hebrew. Yehudim comes from the tribe of Yehudah. And Yehudah was named by the matriarch, Leah, as he was the fourth son. And of the four women who gave Jacob the patriarch, Yaakov Avinu, children, it would make sense that each would be apportioned an equal part of the 12 tribes that were understood, that were to be manifested. Given that, as soon as she had number 4, she understood that she was to be thankful and to be appreciative because she had more than her given lot. And so, we were named after Yehudah, Yehudim, from the language of Hoda'ah, to give thanks. So when we give thanks and when we're appreciative, it actually builds our kli, builds our vessel, provides us more kelim, more vessels in order to receive the light that Hashem has for us. It's like a great king who wants to give his princess or prince an amazing gift. And the king is only going to continue giving treasures from his treasure palace to the children if they appreciate it. Otherwise, what's the point? We are not to be spoiled. We're here to earn our work. We're here to work for it. So too, as the Rebbe Shlita says, consciousness of God's divinity is revealed gradually. I think it's also important to note an amazing idea from Shir Shirim, Parak 5, chapter 5, verse 2. In the middle of it, it says, Kol Dodi Dofek. Dofek means knocking. This quote can be translated as, my beloved's voice is knocking. But Dofek also can be translated as pulse. So I believe it's brought down in the Zohar, this connection between the knocking and the pulse. And I think it's meaning to say that my beloved is knocking, my beloved is pulsing, or my beloved is knocking through the pulse, meaning that every single heartbeat that transpires within us is directly from the Creator. So we can meditate and put our fingers on our wrists and feel Creator knocking and saying, I love you, I love you, I love you. It's an amazing thing to contemplate, that we are being willed into existence at every moment, and that the Creator is literally beating our heart for us and breathing us into existence. It's a simple way to increase our consciousness of the Creator and to increase our spiritual work and be thankful, because what better way to be thankful and appreciative, at the very least, for our heartbeat, as our beloved is knocking. The Rebbe Shlita continues, it is important to understand the following. At the time that God becomes known to an individual, he or she is filled with unlimited joy, a perfect spiritual joy. And it is this joy that the Creator intended to give to his creation when he created the world with the intention of giving goodness. And I think it's important to note that even a tiny pleasure of spirituality is infinitely great. Not that we can really comprehend that until we've tasted it. But the idea is that spirituality does not divide. We say Hashem Echad, because he has one desire. He is the only thing that's ever going on. It's not that the Creator created reality, so to speak, though that is true. But the paradigm that we're speaking from is that the Creator is also reality, and that we are within the reality that is him. So too, if we were to experience even a fraction of spirituality, we can't really comprehend what that really is, because spirituality doesn't quite fragment. As we've spoken about in a prior class, that the glory of a single person, a single soul, is the entirety of the glory of God, because spirituality does not divide. We think that each person is a chelik, a portion of Hashem on high, the Creator. And that's true. But paradoxically, it's also the fact that it's incomprehensibly infinite. We have to dance with this reality. The Rebbe Shlita continues, all other pleasures that don't ensue from the revelation of his divinity, categorized by our sages as lust, envy, and honor. Although they do indeed have an element of pleasure, the Holy Zohar refers to this feeling of pleasure as a thin light, or a nehiru dekik. This very small, thin light is initially separated from the realm of the holy and intentionally provided in order to give sustenance to the realm of defilement and the outer shells of the klipot. That is, for the sustenance of humanity, even when it does not follow the path of faith and selfless giving. I wanted to note in the idea of lust, envy, and honor that in the introduction to the Zohar by the Baal HaSulam, which is translated in English by Yehudah Cohen, this is a magnificent foundational work, very affordable online. It's not only an amazing translation of the work itself, but it's a compilation. There's journal questions in between paragraphs and different excerpts from the Rebbe Zatzal and even the Rebbe Shlita that are included in it. And it's really a masterful work. It even has a approbation by Rabbi Lord Sir Jonathan Sacks Zatzal, may his memory be for a blessing. He said, Yehudah Cohen has performed a wonderful service in making available to an English-speaking audience this introduction to the Zohar by one of the modern masters of Jewish mysticism, the late Rebbe Yehudah Leib Ashlag. Read it and it will help you open your eyes to the infinite radiance that fills the world and the seeking soul. A life-changing work. Wow. So I think it's just important to note, I digress a little bit as I'm recommending this book, but we're reading Matan Torah. I think it's fair to say that there's three pillars, perhaps four, but three main pillars of this learning. I think Judaism in general. There's Hashkafa, there's the philosophy that we're learning, which is essentially Matan Torah. There is the Kabbalah itself, which is more akin to the introduction to the Zohar, which is talking more about systems and soul levels and lights and worlds. But it also goes into some philosophy too, as it has the journal questions, which is amazing. Very contemplative and very deep. And it should be learned ideally with a study partner and learned slowly. But in any case, highly recommend. And there's also Avodas Hashem. There's actually divine service, which can be found in the Maimarim, the essays, whether they're Birkat Shalom or Bracha V'Shalom or Shemati articles. There's a lot of options for the service of God. But the English option in the meantime would be inner work. This is like oxygen to me personally. It's just an amazing, amazing book with holy nuggets of quotes and wisdom. And it's a great start for someone who wants to do the work and begin and have a foundation. And I would say the four maybe subcategory, which is also foundational, perhaps connected to the Hashkafa, is history. To learn about the stories, about the great spiritual masters that one connects to. So in regards to lust, envy, and honor, the introduction to the Zohar goes into great detail regarding the modalities of the will to receive. So I'll read a short portion from inside the book, just to give a basis of what we're talking about here. A person in this world needs to receive nourishment and develop through all the modalities of the will to receive for oneself alone, namely the inanimate, plant, animal, and speaking that pertain to this world. For the nourishment of the human has within it these four modalities, which come from the four modalities of the inanimate, plant, animal, and speaking that comprise the human will to receive for oneself alone. These are A, the inanimate, which is the will to receive that which is needed for survival, like food and sleep. B, the plant modality, which consists of a will to receive beyond that which is needed simply for survival, that is, a desire for luxuries, but limited to animal lust alone. Obviously, a rock is different from a plant, and a plant, interestingly, just to observe the spiritual reality that's rooted in the physical reality that we observe, a plant is nourished by water and the sun, and it grows towards the light. It grows up. Something to contemplate as we continue speaking about these desires. C, the animal modality, which consists of a longing for specifically human appetites such as honor and power, or in our case, lust, envy, and honor. And finally, D, the speaking modality, which consists of a thirst for knowledge. Knowledge is a very popular desire that's being received today, and it's really flourishing. Secular spirituality and the New Age movement is booming. And I think it's alluding to and hinting at the yearning soul of all of us wanting to connect to our source. The thing is that, being that I myself, prior to coming back to my roots, was quite involved in the New Age movement, can say, at least for myself, that as opposed to connecting to source, it's connecting to self. And it's true that the deepest sense of self, the deepest essence, is the creator, because we're a portion of him, so to speak. But because it's under the framework of something outside the truth that refines us, being Torah and mitzvot, by definition, everything involved in secular spirituality boosts one ego. You're quite serving yourself. I mean, so many of the notions are about self-love and self-development and connecting to the higher self, as opposed to connecting to something outside of oneself, like the other, being the creator or the friend, the family, so on and so forth. So Chazal, our sages, say that lust, honor, and envy take us out of this world, as brought down in Pirkei Avos, Ethics of the Fathers. One can understand that at a simple level, meaning if someone is ensconced, enveloped in these desires, their consciousness is self-serving, egoistic, and they're brought to lower levels so that they can chase these lowly desires. And they are taken out of this world, meaning they're not even involved in the practical matters of self-work and self-development because they're trapped by these desires. At the same time, one can say that this takes a person out of the world because it raises them and elevates them to the spiritual worlds. How is this so? Lust, envy, and honor can be viewed and transmuted into a holy way. How? Lust can be used in a holy way through a holy union of husband and wife with intention to bring new souls into the world or to strengthen the connection between them and to grow. Envy can be used in a holy way, being we can be envious of others' wisdom, envious of their good character traits, in a proper way that fuels us and convinces us and brings us to do more inner work ourselves, inspires us to do more. And holy honor, as opposed to honoring oneself, to honor the other, honor the spouse, honor the friend, and most importantly, honor the Creator. So when we transmute these, then we can be brought out of this world into the upper worlds. And I think another idea too, if one is not transmuting these into a holy way, and they're really ensconced and enveloped in these in a negative aspect, by God's mercy, it is possible that they fulfill those desires. One can only have so much lust and so much envy and so much honor in their life until they realize that it's empty and it brings them nowhere. So by fulfilling those desires, they're climbing the hierarchy of desires from inanimate to plant, to animal to speaking. And above speaking, because speaking is alluded to knowledge, and knowledge in itself is receiving, because we receive knowledge, we receive wisdom. What's higher than that is the Yehudi, the modality of the Jew, Yashar Kel, which is purely giving as opposed to receiving. So if someone goes through lust, envy, and honor, hopefully those will be fulfilled, and they can finally seek this spiritual pleasure of serving God, or at the very least starting with spiritual pleasures. I think that's enough on the modalities. If you want to learn more about the modalities of the will to receive and all the intricacies of the foundations of Kabbalah, aside from the Hashkafa that touches on it, highly recommend Introduction to the Zohar, as compiled by Yedida Cohen. To continue, the Rabbi Shlita says, this is because progress in service of God takes place over the course of many years, and in the meanwhile, it is impossible for a person not to have a life. So it was set up that people would base their lives on joys other than spiritual joy. The machine that is called a person must feed on the fuel of pleasure. If we have no pleasure and have no hope for pleasure in the future, we cannot continue to live. Therefore, in the meantime, we have the physical pleasures of envy, lust, and honor. Intellectual pleasure is a bit higher, but it's not divine revelation. I think it's important to note that this is the aspect of Greek philosophy, searching for knowledge and wisdom, just for the sake of it. But again, in essence, that's just receiving. It does not give someone the framework to truly develop themselves to be a giver and be akin to the Creator. Rebbe Shita ends this comment by saying, we must be clever and be fortunate in order not to become captive to the pleasures that were provided for humanity's minimal existence, for we can easily bury ourselves in these pleasures, and there is no hope that one day we can see the true light. That's the hope. The hope is that we can attach to the things that are most conducive to our growth, as the Rebbe Shita says, connecting to Sfarim and Sofrim, connecting to the holy books and the holy people who write the books. The Rebbe Shita comments when the Baal HaSulam says, when this happens, the lowly are raised up via a true recognition of God, to be a chariot for God and to cleave to Him. He says, what is the idea of the chariot? The concept of chariot appears frequently in the Hasidic literature. Rebbe Baruch Shalom Ashlag, the Rebbe Zatzal, gave the following explanation. In the material world, a chariot is a vehicle in which a person sits, and the vehicle transports the person from place to place. Our sages said, the forefathers are the chariot. Each one of them carried a certain attribute and was a chariot for this attribute. Abraham, being Avraham Avinu, the patriarch, was a chariot for the attribute of loving kindness, or as we say in Hebrew, chesed. That is, wherever he went, he brought this attribute, and everyone in the world was able to learn from him the service of loving kindness. The patriarch Isaac, or Yitzchak Avinu, was a chariot for the attribute of strength of character, or gevura. He carried this attribute with him everywhere. If you merit divine revelation, then you become a chariot for God. You merit a connection between God and yourself, and then become a chariot which the Holy One enclothes and rides upon. God is revealed in your soul, and wherever the person who cleaves to God goes, he or she carries there the revelation of God. There's a notion in spirituality that sages only write about what they experience. If they're familiar with the lights and the levels and the worlds, then they can speak about it tangibly and write them down. So to the point of the patriarchs being chariots, and the point of there are those out there today who are chariots themselves, it's a point of connecting to Sofrim, Vesfarim, holy books and the holy people who write the books. I hope and pray that everyone can find themselves a true rabbi. Because if you connect to the chariot, hop in the back seat, you're on for the ride. And slowly but surely, you yourself can become a chariot for others as well. We started this series with Matan Torah itself, but there is an earlier essay called A Time to Act. And in A Time to Act, there is a notion that the Baal HaSulam brings regarding a true rabbi, or a qualified rabbi. So I wanted to bring that to end the shiur, to end the class. The Rebbe Shita says, for defining what a qualified rabbi is, for a qualified rabbi, we find two definitions. A, quote, if the rabbi is similar to an angel of the Lord of hosts, then seek to learn Torah from his mouth. From the Talmud, Mesechet Moed Katan, 17a. And the quote of an angel of the Lord of hosts is from the prophet Malachi, 2:7. That is, if the rabbi's effort is to be giving, and he doesn't want to receive in any way, that's a qualified rabbi. Because angels are operating somewhat on an operating system. I've heard that angels are described as spiritual animals because they're running by instinct. They're just doing their service. They're doing their job. Not to say that a qualified rabbi doesn't have consciousness. He's definitely at a conscious level. But in the sense that he doesn't need to receive, and his nature has automatically actually become in the modality of giving, that's an amazing thing. That's something we want to connect to. And B, if he can clearly explain, even partially, the hidden secrets and underlying purposes of Torah in a manner that is uplifting and inspires people to serve God. Simple yet powerful examples of a qualified rabbi. So too, the Rebbe Shita says on the very first page of Inner Work, it is important to learn spiritually only from someone who is spiritually developed. A true spiritual teacher has attained all the 5 levels of Nefesh, Ruach, Neshama, Chaya, and Yehudah. If we were to hold to this ideal standard, however, people would not consider themselves qualified to teach. Today, we need to seek out a spiritual teacher who is at least striving to attain the truth. MS, truth, is another name for Kodesh Baruch Hu, for Hashem, the Creator. Attaining Him meaning to have the vekis with Him, to be one with Him. And it's sad that there's not so many leaders out there that are truly aspiring to correct themselves to the fullest extent and attach themselves to the Creator. If that was so, the world would look different, and the Jewish world would look very different today. So I hope and pray that we can connect to the best souls for us, because everyone has its particular thing that they're attracted to and connected to. Tov, all the best, always a pleasure. Until next time. Hitayot, see you later.